This is a new type of segment. It's the Q&A section. It was actually invented by the subscriber Umar Salim. Thanks, Umar, for that, and nice to meet you virtually. So I'm going to go ahead and read your question, and I'm going to try and answer it this time. I think that varies from person to person. But if I had to give a very simple and short answer, I think it would be triggers. So whatever triggers you, essentially is a source of attachment, for attachment. Whatever triggers you makes you be more in the I, and is at the same time probably a source for attachment, for clinging. At least that's how I explain it to myself. So, and sources for attachment or which trigger you can be many things. I wrote down a couple of them. So it can be your thoughts or emotions. It can be your body image, your desire for recognition and approval. That's a classic, especially for those of us who are in the business world. You can have a fear of non-existence. That's another source for attachment. Then you are attached to some kind of doctrine or some dogma or religion that helps you overcome this fear, but leads to attachment as well. A source for attachment can be cultural or just social conditioning, the way your society works, what kind of rules they go by, what's important to them. You can be conditioned by all that kind of stuff. Your material possessions, or just roles that you might have or think you might have, labels, that's just a couple of them. So as individual as those triggers are, and as those sources for attachment are, as the individual are the remedies, you can, that are offered to us, that help us overcome these, I think. So there's a lot of paths to, wisdom or enlightenment, if you want to call it that. And I think the trick is, to find the one that's most suitable for your problem, so to speak, So if, for instance, I can just give you an example. I tried a lot of things, in my 20s. I looked pretty much in every religion that there is and all kinds of spiritual traditions, and I ended up leaving the Catholic Church that I was brought up in my early 20s, and I went over to Buddhism. I became a practicing Buddhist, but inside of Buddhism there's so many different paths, and I guess once I tried Vipassana meditation, which is a certain type of Vipassana, I think it's called. So basically you have to be silent, and all you do is sit or walk just silently for yourself, and it killed me at the time. I couldn't do it. I started crying. It had a total adverse effect on me. I freaked out. So it was clear to me that was not for me. So because that would have triggered and therefore made me even more in my me. So I found I just needed a different approach. So I guess and I think that over the course of a lifetime, obviously that can change, because I think the point is, once you're over a certain trigger, probably another pops up, and so that might lead you to having to change your practice or your, whatever you're following. So that sounds kind of commonsensical, but I think that pretty much it's triggers that sort of catapult you back into the I. And it's really funny because in my experience, we tend to, whatever practice we follow, there comes a point where you feel like, oh, it's all good now, I'm over it, and then something happens and triggers you, and you're back to square one, and you're really frustrated because you thought, well, I thought I was over that, but you're not. And the only thing you did was, by adopting a spiritual practice, you sort of embellished the I or the me. It's now a spiritual or a spiritual me or an I, but it's still there. So I guess, and I think something that I learned from reading J. Krishnamurti, and there's a book discussion that we did on the ending of time, was that he says this whole circus of trying to become something is actually, and this whole idea of following a certain tradition in order to become something, or in order to lose the sense of I, is futile, because to him it's more of a movement of surrendering and letting go, instead of pursuing something. Because if you pursue something, not only are you strengthening the sense of I-ness or me-ness, but you're also sort of capturing yourself in linear time, which makes it all worse, because the I or the me relies to a great extent on things that happened in the past, or things that you can look forward to in the future, but you're rarely in the now. So, and according to J. Krishnamurti, or at least the way I understood him, being in the now is sort of like your gateway to, to higher consciousness, if you will. And higher doesn't mean, I don't say higher in terms of a value statement, that it's better, but it's just that there's just more available to you in the moment, in the now, than there is in linear time, so. Now, I presume that you referred to the assumption that, or the system of knowledge that living beings, such as human beings, not only have a physical body, but somehow have also like an energetic body. This is a school of thought that I'm actually not at all qualified to talk about, because I don't follow it, or I don't have any knowledge, haven't studied it. So, but I'm not sure what you mean by contracted energy, but if I assume that's what you mean, then, and if I have to just take your question at face value and answer it in a sense with common sense, then I'd probably say something like, well, apparently human beings are life forms that, or systems that have a certain complexity to them, if you look at it just, I guess, as rationally as possible. So, and that system emerges in space-time and has a certain stability over the period of time that it exists, and then it decays. So nature in general seems to follow processes of specialization. If you look to just general evolutionary theory, so there seems to be a process of specialization and also adaptation going on all the time. So the whole spiel, like cells divide, they pool together, they build more or less complex systems and subsystems, and they have various degrees of consciousness. And so as human beings or entities sort of evolve over time, they adapt according to their embodied experience, meaning, we not only interact with, our immediate environment on a physical level, but I think we're in a co-creational sort of relationship with the environment. So we have an impact on it, and it has an impact on us. It's fundamentally this distinction between I and other, or subject and object, is illusionary, in my opinion. So, and there are different theories regarding obviously consciousness, and various philosophical and scientific positions you can take. So some believe that consciousness is an epiphenomenon of matter, that first there's matter and then something happens and consciousness kind of, for some, in some shape or form comes out of it or emerges from matter, and matter is first, and others say that consciousness is primary, so the other way around, and that matter somehow emerges, or I don't know, comes up from consciousness. But I think whichever way you look at it, human beings seem to have evolved so far as they are, to be able to have self-consciousness. So it's like, this is where we are, we're human beings, we are capable of having self-consciousness, meaning that we are aware of being alive, we can metacognize, so meaning we can think about our own thoughts. It's almost like you can look upon yourself, you can sort of alienate yourself or observe yourself, and you can ponder on your own existence, so that's self-consciousness for you. And so it seems a natural thing for complex systems such as humans, to emerge at one point in evolution. And so in that sense, it seems natural for there to be individuated or instantiated conscious beings such as ourselves. And if you regard matter as being a form of energy, or if matter and energy are sort of like a continuum, then it should technically be possible, obviously, for humans to dissolve back into, pure energy somehow, I guess. And there certainly are anecdotal accounts of, yogis or prophets or spiritual teachers that were able to, disembody and embody at will, or even to materialize things at will. So I personally wouldn't rule that out, that that's possible. The question to me is if that is desirable, if we should look to sort of get out of the body. And that brings you to the question of purpose. Is there a purpose to our being here, and why are we here? So, it's kind of hard to answer these questions because one question leads to the next right away, right? But I think, there's a possibility that, we are just a happening of nature. It just so happened that human beings evolved, and that they developed self-consciousness, and maybe that's a natural thing everywhere in the universe. So I'm not saying that humans should emerge, but that some kind of living system emerges with, that has some kind of, that develops some kind of higher consciousness. So it seems like common sense to me that that's what would happen everywhere, so. And I think if that's what nature does, then that's probably what we should just, accept and sort of live for the time that we are in a body and that we are able to have self-consciousness. We should just probably, really immerse ourselves in that experience and just take it for what it is, and not try to get out of it, I guess. But I mean, of course, I can empathize with the will to get out of the body, obviously. And if you experienced a lot of physical or even mental or emotional pain in your life, then you have every reason to want to get out of the body, and you have every reason to feel that the body is a cage that you want to get out of. But maybe the sole purpose of nature is to evolve, and for there to be constant creation and recombination of systems and new specializations and all that sort of thing. I think that's something that we tend to forget or not think. I mean, this option, that there is just that's what it is. I think we don't tend to think about this option a lot. So I think there's a point you can come to where you just find your existence and life, in itself beautiful and just actually amazing in terms of, that there is such a thing as bodies that are embodied and that are conscious. And so I think there's a lot to marvel at, if you sort of relax into your own existence for a moment. I think that's a worthwhile thing to do. So to finally answer your question, why haven't the energies dissolved into the whole? I don't know, maybe they're not supposed to, maybe we're just supposed to live for the while that we have in these bodies and just to experience them, and that's it. Make the best out of it. And I think there's two parts to this question. I think the first part is a hypothesis, so that being free from being a contracted energy in the body is something that we should aspire to. I think we should treat that as a hypothesis because that's not a given, So maybe to you it's desirable to free yourself of that. Maybe to someone else it isn't. So we should treat that as hypothesis. But if we do, we should probably ask why it is desirable to free yourself. And there's a lot of questions that, to me, personally ensue if I ask myself that, which are, for instance, why would you not be in the body? You're experiencing a body now, so why not just experience it and explore it while it is there? And the other part of the question that you ask is if it were somehow possible to overcome or leave the confines of the body, if in that case that books, lectures and courses would be helpful. And I think that harks back to your first question. And I think that's entirely an individual thing, and it depends on a lot of factors if books, lectures and courses like these are beneficial to you. And some of the questions I would ask myself in this regard would be, what's the state of your body that you're currently in? What's the state of your nervous system? How conscious are you? Do you live in a cultural environment that allows you to think freely, or do you live in a society where a certain dogma is, ruling, so certain authorities are ruling over you? Do you have the time and the means to afford higher learning to begin with? Not a lot of people do. Some people are just busy working and making a living. Is learning something that is of interest to you? How conscious are you to begin with? How identified are you with your body, and how identified are you with your person? So if you ask if these means are, worthwhile pursuing because they might get you out of ego, I think all these questions need to be asked, because they are all factors that play into whether or not these tools will be useful to you. So all these factors determine whether they're helpful to you. And if your goal would be to be enlightened, or to merge back into the fundamental consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, then my advice would probably be scrap that goal, and just live. And I think that harks back to J. Krishnamurti's wisdom, really, is that he thinks aspiring to enlightenment makes it impossible. As long as you aspire to be enlightened, there's no way for you to ever be enlightened. Because the moment you try to acquire things, you are doing the same thing. You're clinging to something, and your clinging to something actually points to your still having an I or me, or being fully identified with that very confining sense of I-ness. I think it's not so much about fighting that sense of I-ness or trying to get rid of it, but more of seeing it in perspective. So, we are self-conscious. We do have an I consciousness, but we can choose how much we identify with it at the time, And the more we identify with it, I guess, the reasoning is that the more you're identified, the more you are in linear time, the more you are worried about either what's happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future. And this is why you're not in the now. And since the now is your gateway to higher consciousness or higher states of consciousness, or just a freer sort of being, not such a confined being, the more you're in the now, the more that's accessible to you. So also, I personally read these books and I listen to these lectures because I actually take pleasure in doing that, So someone else might play golf or, spend time with their spouse, and I like learning new things. I always have. And I actually like studying things, so as much as I can study them. So that's how I spend my time, and that's what I love doing. And I don't do it to get somewhere or to be someone. I just do it for the fun of it. I think it's fascinating, and I hope I can, with my doing these videos, I can sort of inspire you to be fascinated by it also. So that was the first Q&A session. I hope you enjoyed it. Obviously, I depend on you putting questions in the comment section, so happy to have another one if you so like, and I'll see you next time. Bye.